Episode 8 of The Last of Us, entitled When We Are in Need, is one of the coolest events that happens in the game. And I was very curious to see how it translated to television. I think largely the development team got it right, particularly with some of the major story beats. But I will say ultimately, this is yet another one of those episodes where I feel like the game had a little bit more impact in certain places, although you wouldn't really be able to translate that well into the television show because you're paying your stars so much money to get screen time. So there has to be tie-ins to their involvement in each episode in a way that maybe wouldn't make the most sense. So what do I mean by that? Okay, well, in the game, when Joel gets injured and he's down for the count, we get a huge kind of time jump where Ellie is fending for herself. And this is a significant moment in the game because up until now, Joel has been taking the lead. You are playing as Joel, and Ellie is an ancillary character who's helping you kind of solve puzzles. But for the most part, Ellie comes off as a very weak and very I don't want to say needy, but she needs support in order to succeed. She's very dependent on Joel for everything. Doesn't really understand the way of the world. Doesn't, Joel's the one, as you, the character, solving all the puzzles. Ellie's just standing there. And it makes sense because the game would play itself if Ellie figured everything out. But it's a key moment in the game when you're not playing as Joel anymore and you have to fend for Ellie. And you get to see all these mechanics that you learned as Joel suddenly are playable with Ellie, like how to reload a weapon or how to draw a bow or how to stealth attack an enemy, which is really cool because it shows her progression. Now, it's a little different watching all this. Like for example, you see Ellie immediately in this episode when she runs up on the two cannibal hunter guys, right at the beginning there, James and David. She immediately discharges their rifle. She kneels down. She's got a good line of sight. She keeps her distance. She discharges each of their rifles, and the bullets go flying out. Joel obviously taught her that. I mean, we just saw an episode or two ago her firing a gun for the first time. So they do their best to try to inject those moments, but it loses something in the translation because the game did it, I thought, a lot better. But again, the game is a different medium. In this episode, though, it is very clear to us that we are now getting to take a step back from Joel and focus in specifically on Ellie and all the skills that she has learned in order to be successful on her own. We learn about her making a trade and how to kind of clear an area and how she kind of keeps her guard up, and she's trying to put on a tough appearance to, she lies about, we come from a big community, and, she's definitely learning, right? She lets her guard down a couple times, and this bites her, and this is part of her character development. When she's sitting around the fire talking to David, and James sneaks up basically behind her, and he's like got a gun to her head. It's like, oh, well, you kind of blew it. You weren't paying attention, shame on you. Not only that, but she leaves that engagement without any of the deer meat at all. She just gets medicine, which she probably could hunt again. That's not a huge deal. But the point is, she doesn't handle it in the most eloquent way. Ultimately, she tries her best to divert everybody away. That doesn't even work. Unfortunately, she gets shot down and she becomes a prisoner. And that's when we really kind of find out, what she's made of. Is she's alone. She tries to get Joel up and alive and like, please help out. She's separated from him. She's alone. And there's these moments of, I think the show was trying to inject this weakness in her that didn't really translate well to me, where it kind of gave the impression that maybe she would kind of turn her back on what she knew in order to save Joel. Like, okay, I'll join you. There's a scene where she puts her hands through she's locked in the cage. She puts her hands on David's hands and she's like, hey, maybe you're right. Maybe I can join you. And then, of course, she breaks his finger and she's like, F you. And it's this very like powerful moment. But the point is, you see Ellie trying, and the Ellie that we met at the beginning of the series would have probably died almost instantly compared to the, year one Ellie that we're seeing now, who's a little more rough around the edges. But is definitely a much more capable fighter and much more able to, fight back. Now, the one thing that I wasn't thrilled about was the fact that this all happened so incredibly quickly in the show. I mean, from what I can tell, it was like 2 or 3 days from the time that Joel gets injured to present day. And the game does it so much better because there's a long period of time. So much of a period of time, and when you're playing with Ellie by yourself for so long, you don't even know if Joel is alive. That's what I was mentioning earlier about how the show kind of always is like, hey, we paid Pedro Pascal a lot of money. You better get him on camera. In the game, you are playing with Ellie for quite a while before you even know if Joel has survived all of this. You kind of don't even know. And then it's kind of like a relief when she returns back and he's still, being rested up to health. Here, he's injured, seemingly down and out. He gets magic shot of penicillin, and in the next 30 minutes, he's back to his old self. He's walking around. He's doing stealth kills. He's doing violent interrogations. He's murdering people. He's getting information. Now, I didn't like that because I wanted Ellie to be more vulnerable in the way that the game handled it. And that's why I think the game handled this whole thing better than the television show. Although I think there were some really good deliveries by both of the actors, by Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal, of really kind of selling some of the pain and anguish. And this, particularly that last scene where Ellie comes out and she's covered in this dude's blood. She's about to be raped. I mean, that's serious, right? She comes out and she's crying, and Joel calls her baby girl and hugs her. And of course, if you understand that reference, that's what he called his daughter. So that's really the bond. He's like, I'm here for you. You're safe again. You can be a kid again. Let me take the reins of, being an adult here. I'll do the adulting. You go back to being a kid, or trying to. Obviously, her innocence is lost at this point, which is sad because, she's a murderer now and she has to fight. And that's the world she has to live in. She has to bite and fight, and hatchet people and burn things down in order to survive. But that's what the world is for her. And that's what she'll grow up in. And, no amount of coddling or compassion from Joel can take that back. Even if they immediately turn around and go right back to Tommy, the deed is done, so to speak. People are going to be scarred forever. And these are major traumatic events, lots of trauma, lots of emotional burden that she's going to have to deal with. And I like that the show frames her and gives her those moments, but it just happened very, very quickly. I didn't like the fact that we had to keep cutting away from Ellie to seeing Joel trying to save her. I know in the post-credits, where they do the interview, Neil Druckmann and the other guy, the director, had basically said, hey, listen, we wanted to show that Joel was trying to swoop in to save the day but couldn't. I think that actually was a disservice to her story. Her fighting for herself and being alone and having to survive in that cage, and her having to fight that guy one-on-one at the end when the building is burning and everything. That was great. I didn't want to keep seeing Joel working his way to her. I think it would have been better served if Joel was just out for the whole thing. And Ellie just comes back tough and hard, and she's like, okay, I saved the day. And then he wakes up. Rather, you kind of have this weird, like, is Joel going to save her? Or is he going to burst in and be, the damsel in distress? I think it took a little bit away from that story. But ultimately, it is still an absolutely fantastic show. It's phenomenal to see some of the various adaptations between the game and the television show. And I think it works largely when, you have such strong performances. And of course, having Troy Baker in the show was great. I would have really loved a Troy Baker and Pedro Pascal showdown, even if just for a second. Even if in my head, they could have done something like where they both say the same thing and you hear both Joels say the same line at once. But it was cool to see Troy in the show, and I'm glad he got to be a part of it. We still have yet to see the real Ellie, so to speak. I know that actress is out there somewhere, so I'm assuming we're going to see her in the next episode in the finale. But I have to say that the show has been awesome, and I'm so glad it's getting the attention that I think this game deserves. And not that it didn't get the attention before, but it was mostly in the video game universe. But it's awesome that so many people are like, oh, this is a game. It's like, if we could get one more gamer to join the cause and we could convert one more person over, that's what I want. Because I love my hobby and I want to see it succeed. So I'll be back again next week with the final review, unfortunately, for this season as we wrap up The Last of Us Season 1. I don't know. There's a lot of ground for them to still cover. We got to potentially see some giraffes. We got to find out what's going on with the fireflies. We got to basically resolve that whole story very, very quickly. I hope it's not rushed. I honestly could have seen this particular episode that I just finished reviewing for you guys, episode 8, being more than one episode. I still feel like they're suffering from this problem of the week. Everything's wrapped up too neatly at the end of each episode. I'd like to see more of that spill out, but maybe that's something that they'll address in season 2. I see that criticism coming out quite a bit, not just from me. Anyways, that's it for my thoughts on The Last of Us. It's a phenomenal show. I cannot wait to see how it all pans out, even though I already know. And I'll be back again next week with my final thoughts on the season. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.